Okay, I'm Fritz, and I'm from Against Psychiatry and AgainstPsychiatry.com. That's www.againstpsychiatry.com. That's www.againstpsychiatry.com. And this is the 8th and final installment of me reading two articles, Better Than Well and Don't Listen to Him, He's Crazy, which form a two-article zine-lit. And if you've missed any of the previous sections, I highly recommend you just go to the website and read the full text. Either way, I highly recommend you go to the website because there's a lot of other really great stuff on there, like footnotes, and you can email me. And there's a bunch of other articles from different contributors. If you're interested in contributing, get in touch with me. There's links. There's lots of great stuff, visuals, art, things that aren't included in this rather primitive YouTube video. But this is our first video, and hopefully our second video will be better, and they'll just keep getting better and better. Right now I'm just trying to wrap up reading the last of this article, and I really appreciate you being with me. Alright? So I'm going to pick up where I left off, right down here. Okay. The government promotes drugs because addicted people, no matter what they are addicted to, are easier to control. Society prefers for its addicts to be starting out on pharmaceuticals because they are easier to regulate that way. As an added bonus, the money goes straight to the U.S. pharmaceutical industry, top government donors, instead of to DIY drug labs or to impoverished rural farmers that supply poppy to terrorist cartels. People who seek help to get clean off of illegal drugs will usually be prescribed psychiatric drugs. These supposed detox programs simply shift addicts from one substance to another, convincing them that their brains are actually defective and that they require the new drugs in order to function. Propaganda steeped in the deep doublethink of psychiatry influenced the culture of the recovery community by conflating genetic disease, psychological dependence, physiological dependence, as indicated by tolerance and withdrawal, and chosen coping strategies which deviate from socially approved lifestyles. They promote concepts such as dual diagnosis, a psychiatric label affixed to people supposedly suffering from two genetic brain disorders, mental illness and substance abuse. Based on this definition, recovery is then defined as abstaining from illicit drug use while simultaneously adhering to an approved program of pharmaceuticals. A person who chose to live entirely drug-free would be said to have relapsed. Throughout society, psychiatric drug use is applauded, while illicit drug use is punished. As psychiatric drugging soars, the war on drugs rages, putting more and more people behind bars for choosing to use different drugs than the ones currently being promoted by the government. The prison industrial complex and the psychiatric system operate as part of the same social control entity. And according to a recent Federal Bureau of Justice statistics report, 45% of inmates in federal prisons, 56% of inmates in state prisons, and 64% of inmates in county and local jails are labeled as mentally ill. Harmful psychiatric drugs, particularly tardive dyskinesia-inducing neuroleptics like Seroquel, are often prescribed to prisoners off-label to quiet them down. Prisoners are typically misled about the drugs administered to them, potent antipsychotics being described simply as sleeping pills. In the state of Vermont alone, a full 46% of prisoners, poor people who the government has decided are best kept in cages, are also being administered at least one psychiatric drug. Psychiatric labeling and drugging of inmates is typically lauded by liberals and progressive types who choose to interpret these chemical leg irons as a rehabilitative treatment. In addition to the many non-imprisoned or institutionalized people who are court-ordered to submit to psychiatric drugging against their will, the psychiatric system works with the prison system and the courts to force drug prisoners and to make submitting to psychiatric drugging an increasingly common requirement for parole or probation. For the growing population of psychiatrically labeled, socially marginalized, and criminalized people cycling in and out of jails, psychiatric wards, drug rehab programs, and homeless shelters, the distinctions between one form of authoritarian institutionalized reality and another can seem to blur. Clinics and shelters for homeless folks are vital resources. I relied on drop-in centers for basic needs such as showers, condoms, and medical care for much of my times on the streets. I am not suggesting that all the radical identified folks who work at these places should give up in their effort to help provide these resources. On the contrary, more resources are desperately needed. People have a right to food and housing. People have a right to harm reduction materials such as clean needles, and also to be assisted in detoxing from meth or heroin without being simultaneously labeled with a genetic brain disease and hooked on some new, potentially quite harmful pharmaceutical. People have a right to get treatment for physical injuries and diseases without being coerced into receiving psychiatric treatment as well. Social service workers also have rights. They have the right to help people without being coerced into simultaneously abusing them. As a queer trans person who ended up homeless after escaping psychiatric abuse as a teenager, there were no housing programs that would have respected my need to live free from psychiatric drugging and labeling. The past 6 years on the streets and on the road nearly killed me several times. But unlike many friends of mine, I was fortunate enough to possess racial and class privilege and to have a taste for adventure. But perhaps more than anything else, it was my association with the anarchist punk scene that helped empower me to avoid getting strung out, and it instead encouraged me to keep busy traveling and squatting and dumpster diving and stenciling and riding bikes and writing zines. For this constructive influence, I am eternally grateful. Although my associates in the anarchist scene were not particularly supportive of my struggle to withdraw from psychiatric drugs, a difficult process that took more than 2 years, I felt safe around anarchists because I knew that no matter how annoying I might become, their desire to pass as anti-authoritarian made it unlikely that they would ever call the cops to have me institutionalized. Now this is changing, and coercion is being made to pass for support. My association with this community was extremely helpful as I struggled to get clean, but in the wake of increasing psychiatric influence on this subculture, I often wonder if a younger version of myself simply would be pressured back on drugs. Okay, well, that's the end of that article, and that's the end of the 2-article zine-lit, and there's footnotes, but I'm not going to read them, so if you're interested in checking those out, go to the website, www.againstpsychiatry.com. This is Fritz. This has been the first video that Against Psychiatry has produced, and I assume that the second one will be even better. And I hope to hear from folks who see this video. You can email me. My email address is on the website, so check out the website. Shoot me an email. Let me know what you think. And if you're interested in contributing anything, we're always soliciting contributions. So, yeah. Okay, it's like the middle of the night. I'm exhausted. I wanted to get this video made. I'm so tired. I'm like tripping over my words. And I just need to go to bed. But thank you so much for being with me. I hope it's been informative. And I'm a survivor of psychiatric abuse. And, I'm not trying to tell other people what to think. I do have some very strong opinions, but I'm just trying to make information more available to people so that people can make more informed choices for themselves and their families. So thank you very much for tuning in. And, take care out there, all right? Also, I want to mention, psychiatric drugs, like I mentioned, they're very addictive, and they have serious withdrawal syndromes. And if you're on psychiatric drugs, don't just quit all at once. Don't go cold turkey. You need to slowly taper off your drugs one at a time. Otherwise, you could get very, very sick. You could become suicidal. It's definitely, not safe or pleasant. So, try to find a doctor to help you taper off. If you can't find a doctor who's willing to do that, taper yourself off. But just, go slow and be prepared to feel worse before you feel better, okay? And, try to do it with as much support as you can, because it's a hard process. I went through it myself over 5 years ago, and, I'm doing better and better the longer I'm off those drugs. But the initial year is really rough, and you need support, okay?